Elena Martinez looked at the alarm clock on her small wooden table. It was 4:30 in the morning. She had to get up in 30 minutes to start her first job of the day. Her body felt heavy and tired, but she knew she had no choice. She had to work. She lived in a tiny apartment with her younger brother Miguel. The apartment had one bedroom, one bathroom, and a small kitchen. The walls were thin, and she could hear their neighbors talking loudly next door. The paint on the walls was old and cracking. The furniture was old too, but it was all they could afford. Elena was 22 years old. Miguel was only 15. 2 years ago, their parents died in a terrible car accident. Since that day, Elena had to take care of everything. She had to pay for rent, food, clothes, and Miguel's school supplies. She also had to make sure Miguel did his homework and stayed out of trouble. Before their parents died, Elena was studying music at the local community college. She wanted to be a professional piano player. Music was her life. When she played piano, she felt happy and free. She forgot about all her problems. But after the accident, she had to quit school. She needed to work and make money to survive. Now Elena worked 3 different jobs. Her first job started at 5 out in the morning. She cleaned offices in the big buildings downtown. She had to vacuum the carpets, empty the trash cans, and clean the bathrooms. The work was hard and boring, but it paid enough to help with rent. The alarm clock rang loudly. Elena opened her eyes and stretched her arms. Her back hurt from sleeping on the old couch. She let Miguel sleep in the bedroom because he needed rest for school. She always put his needs first. Elena got up quietly and walked to the small bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her long black hair was messy, and she had dark circles under her brown eyes. She looked tired because she was tired. Every day was the same: work, work, and more work. She washed her face with cold water and brushed her teeth. Then she put on her cleaning uniform, a blue shirt and black pants. The clothes smelled like cleaning chemicals from yesterday's work. She tied her hair back and grabbed her small bag with her lunch inside. Before leaving, Elena checked on Miguel. He was sleeping peacefully in the small bed. His school books were on the floor next to him. She smiled a little. Miguel was a good student and she was proud of him. She wanted him to finish high school and go to college. She wanted him to have a better life than she had. Elena walked quietly to the kitchen and made herself a cup of instant coffee. The coffee was cheap and didn't taste very good, but it helped her wake up. She looked at the bills on the kitchen table. The rent was due in 5 days. The electric bill was overdue. Miguel needed new shoes for school. The numbers made her head hurt. She wrote a small note for Miguel. "Good morning. There is cereal in the kitchen. Don't forget your math homework, love you, Elena." She left the note where he would see it. Elena walked outside into the dark morning. The air was cold, and she pulled her old jacket closer to her body. She walked to the bus stop and waited. The bus came 10 minutes later. It was crowded with other people going to work early in the morning. Most of them looked as tired as she felt. The bus ride took 30 minutes. Elena sat by the window and watched the city wake up. She saw other people walking to work, cars driving fast down the streets and shops opening their doors. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry. When Elena got to the office building, she met her supervisor, Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson was a strict woman who always wore gray suits and had gray hair. She never smiled and always found something wrong with Elena's work. "You're 3 minutes late," Mrs. Johnson said, looking at her watch. "I'm sorry. The bus was delayed," Elena explained. "Don't let it happen again. You have 20 offices to clean today. The trash in office 15 wasn't emptied properly yesterday. Make sure you do it right this time." Elena nodded and took her cleaning supplies from the storage room. She had a cart with vacuum cleaner, mops, cleaning sprays, and trash bags. The cart was heavy and hard to push. She started cleaning the first office. It belonged to a lawyer who left papers everywhere. His desk was messy and his trash can was full of coffee cups and old sandwiches. Elena cleaned everything carefully. She knew that if she made mistakes, she might lose this job. She couldn't afford to lose any of her jobs. As she worked, Elena thought about music. She remembered the beautiful piano in her parents' house. It was an old brown piano that her grandmother had given to her mother. Elena learned to play on that piano when she was 6 years old. Her mother taught her the first songs. Her father loved to listen to her play after dinner. After the accident, they had to sell the piano. They needed money for the funeral and other expenses. Elena cried when the buyers came to take it away. It felt like they were taking away a piece of her heart, but Elena still played music whenever she could. On weekends, she played piano at small restaurants and cafes around the city. The owners paid her $20 or $30 for playing for 3 hours. It wasn't much money, but it helped. More importantly, it kept her love for music alive. Elena finished cleaning the first office and moved to the second one. This office belonged to a young businessman who kept everything neat and organized. His desk was clean and his trash can only had a few papers in it. This office was easier to clean. While she worked, Elena dreamed about going back to school. She wanted to study music at a famous college called Berklee College of Music. She had seen pictures of it online. The students there learned from the best teachers and played with other talented musicians. But the school was very expensive. Elena calculated that she would need to save money for 10 years to afford it. And that was only if nothing bad happened and if she didn't spend money on anything else. Elena finished cleaning 6 offices by 10 in the morning. Her shift ended at 11, and then she had to go to her second job. She worked as a waitress at a small cafe called Sonny's Cafe. The owner was a nice old man named Mr. Garcia who was kind to Elena. He knew about her situation and sometimes let her take home leftover food for Miguel. The work at the cafe was different from cleaning offices. Elena had to smile and be friendly to customers even when they were rude or impatient. She had to remember their orders, carry heavy trays, and move quickly between tables. Her feet hurt from standing and walking all day. But Elena liked the cafe better than the cleaning job. She enjoyed talking to people, and some of the regular customers were very nice to her. There was an old woman named Mrs. Peterson, who came every Tuesday for coffee and apple pie. She always asked Elena about Miguel and gave her encouragement. After finishing her last office, Elena packed up her cleaning supplies and said goodbye to Mrs. Johnson. She took the bus to Sonny's Cafe. The ride gave her a few minutes to rest her tired body. When Elena arrived at the cafe, Mr. Garcia was already preparing for the lunch crowd. The smell of fresh coffee and homemade soup filled the air. Elena put on her waitress apron and started setting up tables. "Good morning, Elena," Mr. Garcia said with a warm smile. "How are you today?" "I'm fine, thank you," Elena replied. She didn't want to complain about being tired. "Miguel doing well in school?" he asked while arranging pastries in the display case. "Yes, he got an A on his history test last week," Elena said proudly. "That's wonderful. You're doing a great job taking care of him." Elena appreciated Mr. Garcia's kindness. He was like a grandfather figure to her. Sometimes she wished she could tell him about all her worries and fears, but she didn't want to burden him with her problems. The cafe started getting busy around noon. Elena took orders, served food, and cleaned tables. She moved quickly and efficiently, but she was always polite and professional. Tips were important to her income, so she worked hard to make customers happy. During her break, Elena sat in the back room and ate a small sandwich. She thought about the evening ahead. After the cafe closed at 6 she would go home to help Miguel with his homework. Then, if she was lucky, she might have time to practice piano on the old keyboard that Mr. Garcia let her keep in the storage room. The keyboard wasn't like a real piano. The keys felt different and the sound wasn't as rich and beautiful. But it was better than nothing. Elena practiced whenever she could, usually late at night when Miguel was sleeping and the neighbors couldn't complain about the noise. Elena's biggest dream was to play piano for a living. She imagined herself performing in beautiful concert halls, wearing elegant dresses and playing for audiences who loved music as much as she did. She dreamed of recording albums and traveling to different cities to perform. But those dreams felt very far away from her current reality. As the day continued, Elena served dozens of customers. She smiled, took orders, and carried heavy trays. Her feet hurt and her back was sore, but she kept working. Every dollar she earned was important for her family's survival. At the end of her shift, Elena counted her tips. She had made $18 in tips plus her regular pay. It wasn't much, but it would help buy groceries for the week. Elena took the bus home as the sun was setting. She was exhausted, but she still had to make dinner for Miguel and help him with his homework. She also had to do laundry and clean their small apartment. When she got home, Miguel was sitting at the kitchen table doing his math homework. He looked up and smiled when she walked in. "Hi, Elena. How was work?" 3 weeks later, Elena was having one of the worst days she could remember. Miguel had gotten sick with a bad cold and needed medicine. The medicine cost $40, which was money Elena didn't have. She had to choose between buying medicine for Miguel or paying part of the electric bill. Elena chose to buy the medicine. Miguel's health was more important than anything else. But now she was worried about the electric bill. If she didn't pay it soon, they might turn off the electricity in their apartment. That Thursday evening, Elena was walking home from Sonny's cafe when her phone rang. It was Janet, the manager from the cafe. "Elena, I have a question for you," Janet said. "Do you remember Mrs. Harrison? She's the lady who comes in sometimes for coffee. She has gray hair and always wears expensive clothes." Elena remembered Mrs. Harrison. She was a wealthy woman who was always very polite but didn't talk much. She usually ordered a cappuccino and sat alone reading business papers. "Yes, I remember her," Elena said. "Well, she came in today asking about you. She knows you play piano because she heard some customers talking about it. She has a problem and wants to know if you can help her." Elena's heart started beating faster. "What kind of problem?" "She's organizing a big charity party this Saturday night. It's for helping poor children get better education. They hired a professional piano player, but he got sick and can't come. She needs someone to play piano at the party. She asked if you might be interested." Elena stopped walking. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "She wants me to play at a charity party?" "Yes, it's at some big fancy house. She said she would pay $500 for the whole evening." $500. Elena's mind went blank for a moment. That was more money than she made in 2 weeks of working all her jobs combined. With that money, she could pay the electric bill, buy groceries, get Miguel new shoes, and still have money left over. "Elena, are you still there?" Janet asked. "Yes, I'm here." $500? Are you sure?" That's what she said. "The party is this Saturday from 7 until midnight. You would play background music while people eat dinner and talk. She wants to meet with you tomorrow to discuss the details." Elena's hands were shaking. This seemed too good to be true. "What kind of music do they want?" "I mostly know classical music and some jazz." She said classical music would be perfect. "Elena, this could be really good for you. These are very rich people. If they like your music, maybe they'll hire you for other parties." After Elena hung up the phone, she stood on the sidewalk for several minutes. People walked past her, but she didn't notice them. She was thinking about the opportunity. $500 would solve so many of her problems. But she was also scared. She had never played piano for rich people before. What if she made mistakes? What if they didn't like her music? Elena walked home quickly. She wanted to tell Miguel the good news, but when she got to their apartment, he was sleeping. The medicine had made him drowsy. Elena sat on the couch and thought about what Janet had told her. The next morning, Elena went to work at the office building as usual. But all day she couldn't concentrate on cleaning. She kept thinking about the party. During her lunch break, she called Mrs. Harrison using the phone number Janet had given her. "Hello, Mrs. Harrison? This is Elena Martinez. Janet from Sonny's Cafe said you wanted to talk to me about playing piano at a party." "Oh yes, Elena, thank you for calling. I heard you're a very talented piano player. I'm in a difficult situation and I hope you can help me." Mrs. Harrison had a nice voice, but Elena could tell she was a serious businesswoman. She spoke quickly and directly. "The party is this Saturday evening at the Pemberton estate. It's a charity event to raise money for educational programs for underprivileged children. We usually have background music during dinner, but our piano player called yesterday to say he has pneumonia and can't perform." Elena listened carefully. "What kind of music do you want me to play?" "Classical music would be ideal. Chopin, Mozart, Debussy. Pieces that create a pleasant atmosphere but don't distract from conversation. The guests will be eating dinner and talking about donating money to the charity. We need music that's beautiful but not too loud or dramatic." "I know many classical pieces," Elena said. "I studied classical piano for many years." "Wonderful. The pay is $500 for the evening. You would need to arrive at 6:30 to set up and play from 7 until about 11:30. There will be a break for speeches around 9 o'clock. Elena's heart was pounding. "That sounds perfect. I would be very happy to play for your event." "Excellent. I'll email you the address and other details." "Elena, I should mention that this is a very formal event. The guests are business leaders, politicians, and other prominent people. Everyone will be dressed in formal clothes, men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns." Elena suddenly felt worried. "What should I wear?" "I don't have formal clothes. You should wear something black and elegant. It doesn't need to be expensive, but it should look professional. You'll be performing, so you want to look the part." After the phone call ended, Elena felt excited and nervous at the same time. She had never played for such important people before. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she embarrassed herself? That evening, Elena told Miguel about the opportunity. He was feeling better from his cold and was excited for his sister. $500. Elena, that's amazing. You're going to play for rich people. I'm scared, Miguel. What if I make mistakes? What if they don't like my music? Miguel sat next to Elena on the couch. Even though he was only 15, he was very mature for his age. Living without parents had made him grow up quickly. Elena, you're the best piano player I know. Remember when you used to play for Mom and Dad? They always said you had a special gift. These people are lucky that you're going to play for them. Elena smiled and hugged her brother. Thank you, Miguel. You always know what to say to make me feel better. But Elena still had problems to solve. She needed formal clothes and she didn't have money to buy them. She spent Friday morning calling thrift stores around the city, looking for a black dress that would look professional. Finally, at the third thrift store, Elena found what she needed. It was a simple black dress that had belonged to a woman who worked in an office. The dress was a little too big, but Elena knew how to sew. She bought the dress for $15 and spent Friday afternoon making it fit better. Elena also needed to choose the right music for the party. She spent hours looking through her sheet music, picking pieces that would create the right atmosphere. She chose some gentle Chopin nocturnes, a few Mozart sonatas, and some beautiful pieces by Debussy. She practiced each piece several times to make sure she could play them perfectly. On Friday evening, Elena was practicing piano in the storage room at Sonny's Cafe when Mr. Garcia came to listen. You sound wonderful. Elena, I heard about the party tomorrow night. I'm very proud of you. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. I'm nervous, but I'm also excited. You should be excited. This could open many doors for you. Rich people know other rich people. If they like your music, they might hire you for more events. Elena hadn't thought about that possibility. Maybe this party could lead to more opportunities to play piano and earn money doing what she loved. Elena, Mr. Garcia said, I want to give you something. He handed her a small box. Inside was a pair of pearl earrings. These belong to my wife, he said. She wore them when she performed with her church choir. I want you to wear them tomorrow night. They'll bring you good luck. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Garcia, I can't take these. They're too valuable. Please take them. My wife would have wanted a talented young musician to wear them. You can give them back to me after the party if you want. Elena carefully put the earrings back in the box. Thank you so much. This means everything to me. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the party. She imagined herself sitting at a beautiful grand piano in an elegant room full of well-dressed people. She pictured herself playing perfectly and everyone enjoying her music, but she also imagined things going wrong. What if she forgot the music? What if the piano was different from what she was used to? What if the rich people looked down on her because she was poor? Elena got up and practiced more on the old keyboard. She played each piece over and over until she knew them by heart. She wanted to be completely prepared. Saturday morning came quickly. Elena spent the day getting ready. She washed and styled her hair. She pressed her black dress carefully. She practiced her music one more time. Miguel helped her get ready. He polished her only pair of nice shoes and helped her put on Mr. Garcia's wife's pearl earrings. You look beautiful, Elena, Miguel said, like a real professional musician. Elena looked at herself in the small mirror in their bathroom. The black dress fit well after her alterations. The pearl earrings added an elegant touch. Her hair was styled in a simple but professional way. She looked different, more sophisticated and confident. I hope I don't embarrass myself, Elena said. You won't, Miguel said firmly. You're going to be amazing. As Elena prepared to leave for the party, she felt a mixture of excitement and fear. This was the biggest opportunity of her life. $500 would solve many of their immediate problems. The bus stopped at the edge of the most expensive neighborhood in the city. Elena got off and looked around. She had never been in this area before. The houses were enormous with perfectly cut grass and expensive cars in the driveways. Even the streetlights looked fancy. Elena walked slowly down the wide sidewalk looking for the Pemberton estate. She passed house after house that was bigger than the entire apartment building where she lived. Some houses had gates and security guards. Others had fountains in their front yards. Finally, Elena saw a sign that said Pemberton Estate. The house was the biggest one on the street. It looked like a castle from a fairy tale. There were tall white columns at the front entrance and dozens of windows with golden light shining through them. Cars were arriving and dropping off guests. Elena watched as women in beautiful long dresses stepped out of expensive cars. The women wore jewelry that sparkled in the light. The men wore black tuxedos and bow ties. Everyone looked like they belonged in a movie. Elena suddenly felt very small and out of place. Her simple black dress looked cheap compared to the clothes these people were wearing. What was she doing here? She was just a poor girl who cleaned offices and waited tables. These people probably spent more money on dinner than Elena made in a month. For a moment, Elena thought about turning around and going home. She could call Mrs. Harrison and say she was sick. She could make up an excuse and avoid the embarrassment of not belonging in this world. But then Elena thought about Miguel at home, probably doing his homework at their small kitchen table. She thought about the electric bill that needed to be paid. She thought about the $500 that could change their lives. She took a deep breath and walked toward the front door. A man in a uniform stood at the entrance. He was checking names on a list as guests arrived. "Excuse me," Elena said quietly. "I'm Elena Martinez. I'm the piano player for tonight." The man looked at his list and then at Elena. His expression was not friendly. "You're supposed to go to the service entrance, around the back of the house." Elena felt her cheeks turn red. Of course, she wasn't supposed to use the main entrance. She was the hired help, not a guest. She walked around the huge house carrying her small bag of sheet music. The back of the house was different from the front. There were several trucks parked there, and people in uniforms were carrying flowers, food, and other supplies into the house. Everyone was working quickly to prepare for the party. Elena found the service entrance and went inside. The back part of the house looked like a restaurant kitchen. There were people cooking food, arranging flowers, and setting up tables. The noise was loud and everyone seemed stressed. A woman with a clipboard saw Elena and walked over to her. "Are you the piano player?" "Yes, I'm Elena Martinez. I'm Sarah, the event coordinator. Follow me. I'll show you where the piano is." Sarah led Elena through hallways that were more beautiful than any place Elena had ever seen. The walls had expensive paintings and the floors were made of shiny marble. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, filling everything with sparkling light. They walked through several rooms before reaching the main ballroom. Elena stopped walking and stared. The room was enormous, with a ceiling so high she had to bend her neck back to see it. The walls were covered in gold decorations and huge windows looked out onto beautiful gardens. In the center of the room was the most beautiful piano Elena had ever seen. It was a black grand piano that looked perfect and expensive. The piano was positioned so that the person playing could see the entire room. "There's your piano," Sarah said. "You can set up your music now. The guests will start arriving in about 30 minutes. Elena walked slowly toward the piano. As she got closer, she could see that it was a Steinway grand piano, one of the most expensive piano brands in the world. Elena had only seen pianos like this in pictures. She sat on the piano bench and lifted the lid that covered the keys. The keys were perfect white and black and they felt smooth under her fingers. Elena pressed one key gently and the sound that came out was rich and beautiful. This piano sounded better than any piano she had ever played. Elena opened her bag and took out her sheet music. She arranged the papers on the piano so she could easily find each piece. Even though she had memorized most of the music, she wanted to have the sheets available in case she got nervous and forgot something. Other workers were setting up the room around her. They placed white tablecloths on round tables and arranged flowers in the center of each table. They set up a small stage area where someone would give speeches later in the evening. Elena practiced playing a few scales to get used to the piano. The keys responded perfectly to her touch. This piano made her playing sound better than it ever had before. She felt more confident knowing that she would be playing on such a beautiful instrument. People started arriving in the ballroom. Elena watched as guests walked in wearing the most elegant clothes she had ever seen. The women's dresses looked like they cost thousands of dollars. Their jewelry caught the light from the chandeliers and sparkled like stars. The men looked sophisticated in their black tuxedos. Elena began playing soft classical music as the guests entered the room. She started with a gentle piece by Chopin that she knew very well. As her fingers moved across the keys, she felt herself relax. Music was music, no matter where she played it. The piano responded beautifully to her touch, but Elena quickly noticed that none of the guests were paying attention to her music. They walked past the piano without looking at her. They talked loudly to each other about business, vacation trips, and expensive things they had bought. To them, Elena was just part of the background, like the flowers on the tables or the paintings on the walls. Elena continued playing, switching between different classical pieces. She played Mozart, Debussy, and more Chopin. The music filled the beautiful room, but the guests acted like they couldn't hear it. They were too busy talking about themselves and their wealthy lives. After an hour of playing, Elena took a short break. She watched the guests eating expensive food from small plates. Waiters in white uniforms walked around offering champagne and fancy appetizers. Everything looked delicious and expensive. Elena realized she was hungry. She had been too nervous to eat dinner before coming to the party. But she knew she couldn't eat the fancy food. That was for the guests, not for the hired musicians. A waiter walked past Elena carrying a tray of champagne glasses. She thought about how strange it was to be in this beautiful room surrounded by all this luxury, but still feeling like an outsider. These people lived in a completely different world from hers. Elena started playing again. This time she chose some pieces by Debussy that were calm and peaceful. As she played, she looked around the room at the guests. She tried to understand what their lives were like. She saw groups of men talking about business deals worth millions of dollars. She heard women discussing their expensive vacations to places Elena had only seen in pictures. Everyone seemed to have more money than they knew what to do with. Elena thought about her life compared to theirs. While these people were drinking champagne and talking about buying second homes, she was working 3 jobs just to pay rent for a tiny apartment. While they complained about which expensive restaurant to visit next week, she was worried about buying groceries. But as Elena played, she also noticed something interesting. Even though these people had everything money could buy, many of them didn't look truly happy. They seemed stressed about their business deals. They argued with each other about money and social status. Some of them looked bored, like they had everything but enjoyed nothing. Elena realized that having money didn't automatically make people happy. These wealthy guests had beautiful clothes and expensive jewelry, but Elena wasn't sure they felt the joy she felt when she played music. During another break, Elena overheard 2 women talking near the piano. "This music is lovely," one woman said. "Much better than the usual boring background music we hear at these events." "Yes, the piano player is quite talented," the other woman agreed. "I wonder where Margaret found her." Elena felt a small spark of pride. Even though most guests were ignoring her music, some people were noticing and appreciating it. That made her feel a little better about being there. As the evening continued, Elena played more confidently. She chose pieces that showed off her skill without being too loud or distracting. She played passionate pieces by Chopin, delicate pieces by Debussy, and complex pieces by Mozart. Slowly, Elena noticed that a few guests were stopping their conversations to listen to her music. She saw some people moving closer to the piano. One elderly man stood near the piano for several minutes just listening with his eyes closed. Elena began to feel more comfortable in the beautiful room. The piano was wonderful to play, and her music sounded better than it ever had before. Even though she was still just the hired help, she was doing what she loved most in the world. Around 9 o'clock, the formal program began. Mrs. Harrison walked to the small stage and spoke about the charity. She explained how the money raised tonight would help poor children get better education. She talked about building new schools and providing books and supplies for children who couldn't afford them. Elena listened to the speech and thought about her own childhood. Among all the wealthy guests at the charity party was a young man named David Chen. David was 28 years old, but he looked younger. He had black hair, kind brown eyes, and he wore his expensive tuxedo like it was just regular clothes. Unlike the other guests who seemed to enjoy showing off their wealth, David was quiet and thoughtful. David was not just rich, he was extremely wealthy. 2 years ago, he had sold his technology company to a large corporation for $200 million. The company had created software that helped hospitals keep better records of their patients. David had started the company when he was only 24, working day and night to build something that would help people. Most people David's age would have spent the money on expensive cars, huge houses, and fancy vacations. But David was different. He lived in a nice but not enormous house. He drove a regular car. He gave away most of his money to charities that helped children and families in need. David came to charity events like this one because he truly cared about helping people. While other guests came to see and be seen, David came to learn about problems and find ways to solve them. He had already donated millions of dollars to build schools, hospitals, and community centers. But tonight, David was not thinking about charity work or business deals. From the moment he walked into the ballroom, he was focused on the music. The piano player was extraordinary, and David could tell she was playing with real emotion and skill. David had studied classical piano for 12 years when he was younger. His parents had insisted that he learn music along with his academic studies.
David had been a talented piano student,
and his teacher had said he could become a professional musician if he wanted to. But when David went to college to study computer science, he gradually stopped playing piano. He became obsessed with technology and building his company. Piano practice seemed less important than writing computer code and meeting with investors. Slowly, music disappeared from his life. Tonight, hearing Elena play, David remembered how much he had loved music. Her playing reminded him of the feeling he used to get when he sat at the piano and lost himself in a beautiful piece of classical music. David positioned himself near the piano, but not too close. He didn't want to make the piano player nervous. He just wanted to listen to the music and watch her play. David could tell that this young woman was not like the professional musicians who usually played at these events. Those musicians were technically perfect but emotionally cold. They played the notes correctly but without real feeling. This piano player was different. She played with passion and sensitivity. David could hear the emotion in every note. When she played sad pieces, he could feel the sadness. When she played happy pieces, her joy filled the room. David also noticed that most of the other guests were ignoring the music. They were too busy talking about business deals and social gossip to appreciate what they were hearing. This bothered David. How could they not notice that something special was happening right in front of them? As the evening went on, David found himself moving closer to the piano. He wanted to hear every note clearly. He watched the young woman's hands move across the keys with grace and skill. She played complex pieces from memory and she never made mistakes. David tried to guess what pieces she was playing. He recognized some Chopin nocturnes, a Mozart sonata, and several pieces by Debussy. These were not easy pieces to play. This woman had serious musical training and natural talent. During one of the piano player's breaks, David heard two older women talking about her. "She's quite good, isn't she?" One woman said. "Yes, but she's obviously not from our social circle." The other woman replied, "Look at her dress. It's nice enough, but you can tell it's not expensive. And those earrings are probably borrowed." David felt angry when he heard this conversation. These women were judging the piano player based on her clothes and jewelry, instead of appreciating her incredible talent. David thought this attitude was exactly what was wrong with wealthy social circles. David walked away from the gossiping women and found a chair near the piano where he could listen without distracting the musician. When she started playing again, David closed his eyes and let the music wash over him. The piano player chose a piece by Chopin that David remembered learning when he was 16. It was a difficult piece that required both technical skill and emotional understanding. David had practiced it for months and had never played it as beautifully as this young woman was playing it now. As he listened, David began to remember why he had loved music so much. Playing piano had been his escape from the pressure of school and his parents' high expectations. When he played music, he could express feelings that he couldn't put into words. Music had been his emotional outlet and his source of peace. David realized that he missed playing piano terribly. He still owned a beautiful grand piano in his house, but he hadn't touched it in over 2 years. He had been so busy with business that he had forgotten about the things that truly made him happy. The piano player finished the Chopin piece and moved into a gentle piece by Debussy. David opened his eyes and watched her play. She was completely focused on the music, lost in the beauty of what she was creating. David envied that focus and passion. David began to wonder about the piano player's story. How had she learned to play so well? Where had she studied music? What was her life like when she wasn't playing piano at fancy parties? Looking at her simple dress and the way she seemed nervous around the wealthy guests, David guessed that she was not from a rich family. She was probably working hard to make money. using her musical talent to earn a living. This made David respect her even more. It was one thing to play piano as a hobby when you had plenty of money and no worries. It was completely different to use music as a way to survive and support yourself. That required real courage and determination. During the speeches about the charity, David watched the piano player listening carefully to what Mrs. Harrison was saying about helping poor children get better education. David noticed that the young woman seemed personally connected to this cause. Her expression showed that she understood what it was like to struggle financially. David made a mental note to increase his donation to the charity. If this piano player cared about the cause, then it must be a good organization that really helped people. After the speeches ended, the piano player began a new set of music. This time, she played more challenging pieces that showed off her technical skills. David was amazed by her ability to play fast, complex passages while still maintaining the emotional content of the music. David realized that this young woman was wasting her talent playing background music at parties. She should be performing in concert halls or recording albums. She should be studying at a famous music school and working with the best teachers in the world. But David also understood that talent alone was not enough to succeed in the music world. You needed money for lessons, instruments, and education. You needed connections to important people in the music industry. You needed time to practice without worrying about paying rent or buying food. This piano player probably had none of those advantages. She was probably working several jobs and playing piano whenever she could find opportunities. David felt sad thinking about all the talented people in the world who never got the chances they deserved because they were born poor instead of rich. As the evening continued, David became more and more impressed with the piano player's skill and musicality. She played for over 3 hours without taking long breaks, and her playing never got sloppy or tired. She maintained the same high level of quality throughout the entire evening. Near the end of the party, the piano player chose to play one of David's favorite pieces, a nocturne by Chopin that he had learned when he was 17. David remembered struggling with this piece for months, never quite capturing its mysterious and romantic mood. But this young woman played it perfectly. She understood every nuance of the music. She played the soft sections with delicate beauty, and the passionate sections with controlled intensity. David felt like he was hearing the piece for the first time, even though he knew it very well. When she finished the nocturne, David wanted to applaud, but he didn't want to draw attention to himself or make the other guests think he was being inappropriate. Instead, he just sat quietly, feeling grateful that he had heard such beautiful music. David looked around the room at the other guests. Most of them were still talking about business and social matters. They had completely missed the incredible musical performance that had been happening right in front of them all evening. This made David feel sad and frustrated. These people had so much money and so many opportunities, but they couldn't appreciate real beauty and talent when it was right in front of them. They valued expensive clothes and jewelry more than artistic excellence. David thought about his own life. He had been given many advantages because his family was wealthy and well-educated. He had been able to start his company because his parents could support him while he worked for no salary. He had succeeded partly because of luck and partly because he had opportunities that most people never got. But this piano player had developed her incredible talent despite having far fewer advantages than David had enjoyed. Elena was carefully putting her sheet music back into her bag when she noticed someone walking toward the piano. Most of the guests had already left the ballroom and the waiters were beginning to clean up the tables. Elena looked up and saw a young man in a tuxedo approaching her. This man was different from the other guests Elena had seen during the evening. He looked younger than most of them, maybe in his late 20s. He had been standing near the piano for much of the night, and Elena had noticed him listening carefully to her music. Unlike the other guests who talked loudly during her performance, this man had actually paid attention to what she was playing. Elena felt nervous as he walked closer.
She didn't know what he wanted.
Maybe he was going to complain about her music or tell her she had played something wrong. Elena had never spoken to any of the wealthy guests before, and she wasn't sure what to expect. The young man stopped a few feet away from the piano bench where Elena was sitting. He seemed nervous too, which surprised Elena. Why would a rich person be nervous about talking to her? "Excuse me," he said quietly. "I hope I'm not bothering you." Elena looked up at him. He had kind eyes and a gentle voice. He didn't seem arrogant or mean like some wealthy people Elena had encountered at her various jobs. "No, you're not bothering me," Elena replied. "Is there something you need?" The young man smiled slightly. "I just wanted to tell you that your playing tonight was absolutely beautiful. I've been to many events like this and I've never heard anyone play with such emotion and skill." Elena felt her cheeks turn warm. She wasn't used to receiving compliments about her music, especially from people at fancy parties. "Thank you," she said. "That's very kind of you to say. I noticed you played several pieces by Chopin. They're some of my favorites. The nocturne you played near the end of the evening was extraordinary." Elena was surprised that this man knew enough about classical music to recognize specific pieces and composers. Most of the guests at the party seemed to treat her music as background noise. "Do you play piano?" Elena asked. The young man's expression changed, becoming a little sad. "I used to. I studied classical piano for 12 years when I was younger. I loved it, but I stopped playing when I got busy with other things. Tonight, listening to you play made me realize how much I miss it." Elena could hear the regret in his voice. She understood how life could get in the way of music. If she hadn't needed to work so many jobs, she would spend much more time practicing and playing. "Why did you stop?" Elena asked. "Work took over my life. I started a technology company and became completely focused on business. I convinced myself that I didn't have time for music anymore. But hearing you play tonight reminded me that I gave up something really important." Elena studied his face as he spoke. He seemed genuinely sad about losing music from his life. This was not what she had expected from a wealthy businessman. Elena thought about Miguel at home, probably asleep by now. She thought about the $500 in her bag and how much that money would help them. She thought about how this man had actually listened to her music all evening while everyone else ignored it. Suddenly, Elena had an idea. It was a crazy idea, and she wasn't sure she had the courage to suggest it. But something about this man's love for music made her feel bold. "Would you like to play something?" Elena asked. The young man looked surprised. "What do you mean?" Elena's heart was beating fast, but she continued. "I could take a break and you could play the piano. I noticed you've been listening all evening and you said you miss playing. This is a beautiful piano." The young man stared at Elena for a moment as if he couldn't believe what she had suggested. "You would let me play?" "Why not?" "The party is almost over and most of the guests have left. Mrs. Harrison is busy saying goodbye to people. I don't think anyone would mind." Elena could see the young man considering her offer. His eyes looked toward the beautiful grand piano, and she could tell he was tempted. "I haven't played in over 2 years," he said. "I might be rusty." "Music is like riding a bicycle," Elena said with a smile. "Once you learn, you never really forget." The young man looked around the ballroom. Most of the guests had indeed left, and the few remaining people were gathered near the exit talking to Mrs. Harrison. The waiters were busy cleaning tables and didn't seem to be paying attention to the piano area. "Are you sure you don't mind?" he asked. "I'm sure. I'd love to hear you play." Elena stood up from the piano bench and stepped aside. The young man walked slowly toward the piano as if he were approaching something sacred. He sat down on the bench and looked at the keys for a moment without touching them. Elena watched his face. She could see nervousness, excitement, and longing all mixed together. This was clearly a big moment for him. The young man placed his hands gently on the keys and played a few soft notes. Even those simple notes sounded good. Elena could tell immediately that he had been well trained. His hand position was perfect and his touch was sensitive. "What would you like to hear?" he asked Elena. "Whatever you want to play. Something you loved when you were studying." The young man thought for a moment, then began playing a piece that Elena recognized immediately. It was Chopin's Ballade No. 1, one of the most difficult and beautiful pieces in the classical piano repertoire. Elena's eyes widened as she listened. This man was not just a casual piano student. He was playing at a professional level. His technique was flawless and his interpretation was sophisticated and emotional. The piece began quietly and mysteriously, and the young man captured that mood perfectly. As the music became more dramatic and complex, his playing became more passionate. Elena could see that he was completely lost in the music, just as she always was when she played. Elena had never heard Ballade No. 1 played so beautifully in person. She had listened to recordings by famous pianists, but hearing it live, played with such skill and emotion, was a completely different experience. As the young man played, Elena realized that he was much more than just a businessman who had studied piano as a child. He was a true musician who had somehow lost his way. His playing showed years of serious study and natural talent that matched her own. The few remaining guests in the ballroom stopped their conversations and turned to listen. Even the waiters stopped cleaning to hear the music. The young man's playing filled the entire room with beauty and power. When he reached the climactic section of the piece, the young man played with such intensity that Elena felt goosebumps on her arms. He understood every nuance of the music, every emotional moment that Chopin had written into the composition. As the piece ended with its gentle, mysterious conclusion, the young man's hand slowly lifted from the keys. For a moment, the ballroom was completely silent. Then the few remaining guests began to applaud. Elena was speechless. She had not expected anything like this. This man played better than many professional pianists she had heard. How had he given up something he was so good at? The young man turned to Elena with a smile that was both happy and sad. "Thank you," he said. "I had forgotten how much I love this." "You're incredible," Elena said honestly. "I've never heard anyone play that piece so beautifully." "You're being too kind. I made several mistakes. I didn't hear any mistakes. I heard someone who understands music deeply." Elena sat down on the piano bench next to the young man. Being this close to such a talented musician was exciting for her. She rarely had the chance to talk about music with someone who understood it as well as she did. "Why did you really stop playing?" Elena asked. The young man was quiet for a moment. "I got caught up in the business world. Making money became more important than making music. I told myself that piano was just a hobby, and I needed to focus on practical things." "Do you regret it?" "Tonight, yes. Listening to you play and then playing myself again made me realize what I've been missing. Music used to be the most important thing in my life." Elena understood exactly what he meant. Music was the most important thing in her life too, even though she had to work other jobs to survive. She couldn't imagine giving it up completely no matter what other opportunities came along. "It's not too late," Elena said. "You could start playing again." "Maybe," the young man said. "But I've been away from it for so long, and my life is very complicated now." Elena wanted to ask him more about his life and why it was complicated, but she didn't want to be nosy. Instead, she had another idea. "Would you like to play something together?" Elena asked. The young man looked surprised again. "You mean like a duet?" "We could try. Do you know any pieces for four hands, or we could improvise something?" Elena could see the excitement in his eyes. "I used to love playing duets when I was studying. There's a Mozart piece for four hands that I remember. I know several Mozart duets." "Which one?" They spent a few minutes discussing different pieces they both knew. Finally, they decided on a Mozart sonata that they had both studied. Elena moved to the left side of the piano bench, and the young man stayed on the right side. Playing duets required cooperation and listening carefully to your partner. Elena was curious to see how well they would work together. Since they had just met and had very different backgrounds, they began playing the Mozart piece, with Elena taking the lower part and the young man playing the melody. Almost immediately, after David introduced himself, Elena felt like she should say something more, but she wasn't sure what. She had never had a conversation like this with someone from such a different world. David seemed nice and genuine, but Elena still felt the gap between their lives. "Elena," David said, "would you mind if I asked you something?" "Of course not." "How long have you been playing piano? Your technique is remarkable." Elena sat back down on the piano bench. She could tell that David was genuinely interested in her musical background, not just making polite conversation. "I started when I was 6, Elena said. "My mother taught me the basics, and then I took lessons for several years. But I had to stop formal lessons when—" She paused, not sure if she should share personal details with someone she had just met. "When what?" David asked gently. Elena decided to be honest. "When my parents died 2 years ago, I couldn't afford lessons anymore and I had to work to support my younger brother." David's expression became serious and sympathetic. "I'm so sorry for your loss. That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was, but music helped me get through it. Playing piano is the one thing that makes me feel close to my parents and gives me peace." David nodded. "Music has that power. When I was stressed about business problems, playing piano used to be my escape. I should have never given it up." Elena could see that David understood the emotional importance of music in a way that most people didn't. This made her feel more comfortable talking to him. "What kind of technology company did you have?" Elena asked. "We created software for hospitals. It helped doctors and nurses keep better track of patient information and medical records. The goal was to reduce errors and save lives." Elena was impressed. "That sounds like important work." It was. But I got so focused on the business side, managing employees, talking to investors, dealing with competition, that I lost sight of why I started the company in the first place. I also lost sight of everything else that mattered to me, including music. Elena thought about how different David's problems were from hers. He had too much success and wealth to manage while she struggled just to pay basic bills. But both of them had let circumstances pull them away from music. "Do you still work in technology?" Elena asked. "Not really. I sold my company 2 years ago. Now I mostly focus on philanthropy, giving money to causes that help people." Elena realized that David must be very wealthy if he could afford to give away money instead of working. But she also realized that he was using his wealth to help others, which made her respect him more. "Is that why you came to this charity event tonight?" "Yes, I care about education for underprivileged children. I believe everyone should have the same opportunities to learn and grow, regardless of their family's financial situation." Elena felt a connection to David's interest in helping poor children. She and Miguel were exactly the kind of people this charity was designed to help. "That's wonderful," Elena said. "Not many wealthy people seem to care about those issues." "You're right. Too many people forget how lucky they are and don't think about helping others who weren't born with the same advantages." Elena was beginning to understand that David was different from most rich people she had encountered. He seemed to have genuine compassion and awareness of social problems. Mrs. Harrison approached the piano, interrupting their conversation. "Elena, you did a beautiful job tonight. Several guests specifically mentioned how much they enjoyed your music." "Thank you. Mrs. Harrison, I really enjoyed playing on such a wonderful piano." Mrs. Harrison turned to David. "Mr. Chen, I didn't know you played piano. That was quite impressive, thank you. I'm afraid I'm very rusty, but Elena was kind enough to let me play." "Well, you both provided a lovely end to the evening. Elena, here's a little something extra for your wonderful performance." Mrs. Harrison handed Elena another envelope. Elena thanked Mrs. Harrison and put the envelope in her bag with the first payment. She was curious about how much extra money she had received, but she didn't want to look at it in front of David and Mrs. Harrison. "Elena," Mrs. Harrison continued, "I hope you'll consider playing for our events in the future. I'll certainly keep you in mind." "I would love that," Elena said. Playing at more events like this could provide steady income and allow her to do what she loved. After Mrs. Harrison walked away, David turned back to Elena. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but do you have other opportunities to perform? I play at small restaurants and cafes on weekends. It's not much money, but it helps, and it gives me a chance to practice and perform. What about your musical education? Do you have plans to study more or work toward a music career?" Elena felt embarrassed talking about her dreams with someone who had the resources to achieve anything he wanted. "I dream of going to music school, but it's not realistic right now. I have to work to support my brother and myself." "Where would you want to study?" "Berklee College of Music in Boston. It's one of the best music schools in the world, but the tuition costs more than I make in 2 years. David was quiet for a moment, seeming to think deeply about what Elena had told him. "Elena, would you mind if I asked you to play one more piece? Something you really love?" Elena was surprised by the request, but she was happy to play more. "What would you like to hear?" "Whatever piece means the most to you. Something that shows who you are as a musician." Elena thought about David's request. She wanted to choose something that would show him her musical personality and the depth of her feelings. She decided on a piece by Chopin that her mother had taught her, the same piece her mother used to play when Elena was a child. "This is a nocturne by Chopin," Elena said. "It was my mother's favorite piece. She used to play it for me when I was little." Elena began playing the nocturne, pouring all of her emotions into the music. She played it for her mother's memory, for her love of Miguel, for her dreams of a better future, and for the joy she felt when making music. As she played, Elena forgot about the fancy ballroom and her nervousness about talking to David. She forgot about her 3 jobs and her financial worries. She was completely lost in the music. expressing feelings that she couldn't put into words. David listened intently, and Elena could see that he was moved by her playing. When she finished, there were tears in his eyes. "That was incredible," David said quietly. "I could hear your whole story in that music." Elena felt a little embarrassed that she had been so emotional in her playing, but she was also proud that she had shared something meaningful with David. "Thank you for listening," Elena said. "Music is how I express things I can't say with words. I understand completely. When I used to play, music was my emotional outlet too." David stood up from the piano bench and walked a few steps away, seeming to think about something important. Elena watched him, wondering what was going through his mind. After a moment, David turned back to Elena. "Elena, I want to ask you something, and I hope you won't think I'm being inappropriate." Elena felt nervous. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about what you said about wanting to study at Berkeley, and I've been thinking about how much I miss music and how your playing tonight reminded me of what's important in life." Elena waited for David to continue, not sure where this conversation was heading. "I have an idea, but I want to know what you think before I suggest anything. Do you trust me enough to hear me out?" Elena looked at David's face. His expression was serious but kind. She felt instinctively that he was a good person who wouldn't try to take advantage of her. "Yes, I trust you," Elena said. "What if there was a way for you to pursue your musical education while also helping me reconnect with music? What if we could help each other?" Elena's heart started beating faster. "What do you mean?" "I'm still thinking through the details, but I believe I could help you get the education you deserve. And maybe you could help me remember why music matters so much." Elena stared at David, trying to understand what he was suggesting. Was he offering to help pay for her education? That seemed too good to be true. "David, I don't understand. How could you help me? And how could I help you? Let me think about this more tonight, and maybe we could meet tomorrow to discuss it properly. Would you be willing to do that?" Elena felt dizzy with possibility and confusion. Yes, I would be willing to meet and talk more." "Wonderful. Could I have your phone number?" "I promise I have only good intentions." Elena gave David her phone number, still not quite believing this conversation was really happening. "Elena," David said, "I want you to know that meeting you tonight has been incredibly important for me. Your music reminded me of who I used to be and who I want to be again." "Meeting you has been important for me too," Elena said honestly. "I've never met anyone who understands music the way you do." David smiled. "I'll call you tomorrow and we can talk more about my idea. But for now you should get home. It's getting late." Elena gathered her sheet music and her bag. As she prepared to leave, David walked with her toward the exit. "Elena," David said as they reached the door, "whatever happens with my idea, I want you to know that you have extraordinary talent. You deserve every opportunity to develop that talent and share it with the world." "Thank you, David. That means more to me than you know." Elena walked out into the night air, her mind spinning with thoughts about the evening. Elena woke up the next morning wondering if the previous night had been a dream. She looked at the kitchen table and saw the 2 envelopes with $700 inside. It had really happened. She had played piano for wealthy people, met David Chen, and earned more money in one evening than she usually made in a month. Elena's phone rang while she was making breakfast for Miguel. When she saw David's name on the screen, her heart started beating faster. "Hello," Elena answered. "Good morning, Elena. This is David. I hope I'm not calling too early." "Not at all. I was just making breakfast for my brother before he goes to school. I've been thinking about our conversation last night, and I'd love to talk with you more about my idea. Would you be free to meet this afternoon?" Elena thought about her schedule. She had to work at the office building in the morning, but her shift at Sunny's Cafe didn't start until evening. "I could meet you this afternoon. What time works for you?" "How about 2 o'clock? There's a quiet cafe called the Garden Spot on Maple Street. Do you know it?" Elena knew the cafe. It was in a nice neighborhood, but not as fancy as the area where the party had been held. "Yes, I know where that is." "Perfect. I'll see you at 2 o'clock. After Elena hung up the phone, Miguel came into the kitchen wearing his school clothes. "Who was that?" Miguel asked as he poured cereal into a bowl. "Remember I told you about the wealthy people at the party last night? One of them wants to meet with me today." Miguel looked excited. "Really? What for?" "I'm not sure yet. He said he has an idea that might help both of us." "That sounds promising. Maybe he wants to hire you to play piano at more parties. Elena hoped it was something like that, but she sensed that David had something bigger in mind. She didn't want to get her hopes up too high, but she couldn't help feeling excited about the meeting. Elena went to her morning cleaning job, but she had trouble concentrating on her work. She kept thinking about David and wondering what he wanted to discuss. Mrs. Johnson noticed that Elena seemed distracted and reminded her to focus on her tasks. At 1:30, Elena took the bus to the cafe where she was meeting David. She had changed out of her cleaning uniform and was wearing her best casual clothes, a simple blue dress and the pearl earrings that Mr. Garcia had lent her. Elena arrived at the garden spot a few minutes early. It was a small, cozy cafe with plants hanging in the windows and soft jazz music playing in the background. Elena ordered a cup of coffee and found a quiet table in the corner. David arrived exactly at 2 o'clock. He was wearing jeans and a button-down shirt instead of the tuxedo from the night before. He looked younger and more relaxed, but Elena could still tell that he was successful and wealthy. "Elena, thank you for meeting me," David said as he sat down across from her. "Thank you for asking me. I've been curious about your idea all day." David ordered coffee and then leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but kind. "Elena, I want to be completely honest with you about who I am and why I want to help you. Then I'll explain my idea, and you can decide if it's something you're interested in." Elena nodded, feeling nervous but excited. "As I mentioned last night, I sold my technology company 2 years ago for a substantial amount of money. I'm not just wealthy, I'm extremely wealthy. I have more money than I could spend in several lifetimes." Elena wasn't sure how to respond to this information. She had guessed that David was rich, but she hadn't realized he was that rich. "The money has given me opportunities to help people, which is something I care deeply about. But it's also created some problems. I've become disconnected from the things that used to make me happy. Especially music." David paused to sip his coffee before continuing. "Last night, when you invited me to play piano, something important happened. For the first time in 2 years, I remembered what it felt like to be truly happy. Your music and your generosity reminded me of who I used to be." Elena listened carefully, trying to understand where David was going with this explanation. "I went home last night and played piano for 3 hours. I hadn't done that since college. I realized that I've been living a life focused on money and business deals, but I've been ignoring the things that actually matter." "I'm glad that playing piano again made you happy," Elena said. "It did, but I also realized something else. I've been given incredible opportunities because of my family's wealth and my business success. You have just as much talent as I do. Probably more, but you haven't had the same opportunities." Elena felt a little uncomfortable talking about the differences in their backgrounds, but she appreciated David's honesty. "Elena, I want to propose something that could help both of us. But first, I need to know more about your situation and your dreams. What would you like to know? Tell me about your life, your family, your work, your musical goals. I want to understand what you need and what you want." Elena took a deep breath and began telling David about her life. She talked about her parents' death, taking care of Miguel, working 3 jobs, and dreaming of attending music school. She explained how difficult it was to find time to practice, and how worried she was about providing for Miguel's future. David listened without interrupting, asking only a few questions to better understand Elena's situation. Elena could see genuine concern and interest in his eyes. "Elena," David said when she finished, "what you've accomplished is remarkable. You've kept your family together, maintained your musical skills, and stayed hopeful about the future despite enormous challenges." "I just do what I have to do," Elena said. "That's exactly my point. You've done what you had to do without any help or support. Imagine what you could accomplish if you had the same opportunities that I've had." Elena wasn't sure what to say to that. She had often wondered what her life might be like if money weren't a constant worry. "Here's what I'm thinking," David said. "I want to establish a music scholarship program. You would be the first recipient receiving full funding to attend Berklee College of Music." Elena's coffee cup slipped in her hands. "What?" "I would pay for your tuition, living expenses, and everything else you need to focus completely on your musical education." Elena stared at David, unable to speak. This was beyond anything she had imagined. "But that's not all," David continued. I also want to offer you a job teaching piano to children at a community center that my foundation supports. The job would pay well and give you experience working with young musicians. Elena's mind was spinning. David, I don't know what to say. This is incredible, but it's too much. Why would you do this for someone you just met? Because your talent deserves to be developed. Because every child should have the same educational opportunities regardless of their family's financial situation. And because helping you would also help me reconnect with music. What do you mean? I want to start playing piano seriously again, but I need motivation and inspiration. I was hoping that you might be willing to practice with me sometimes, maybe play duets or just share ideas about music. Elena was beginning to understand. David wasn't just offering charity. He was proposing a partnership where they would help each other. You want us to make music together? Yes, I think we could learn from each other. You could help me become a better musician, and I could help you get the education and opportunities you deserve. Elena thought about David's proposal. It seemed too good to be true, but David appeared to be completely sincere. What about Miguel? I can't leave him alone while I go to school in Boston. We can work that out. There are good schools in Boston, or we could arrange for him to stay here with a family we trust while you visit regularly. The details are manageable. Elena's head was spinning with possibilities. Attending Berkeley had been her biggest dream, but she had never believed it could actually happen. David, this is incredibly generous, but I'm not sure I can accept such an expensive gift from someone I barely know. I understand your hesitation. But Elena, this isn't just about generosity. This is about recognizing talent and making sure it doesn't go to waste. It's about creating opportunities for people who deserve them. David paused and looked directly into Elena's eyes. I've been given advantages my entire life because my family had money. I went to the best schools, had access to the best teachers, and could afford to take risks with my business because I had financial support. None of that was because I deserved it more than anyone else. Elena nodded, understanding what David was saying. You have more musical talent than I do, but you've had fewer opportunities to develop it. That's not fair, and it's not good for society. We lose incredible artists and musicians when talented people can't afford education. Elena thought about all the nights she had dreamed of attending music school while working at her 3 jobs. She thought about Miguel and how this opportunity could change both of their lives. How do I know this is real? Elena asked. How do I know you're not just someone who makes promises he can't keep? David smiled. That's a smart question. Here's what I propose. Let me show you the community center where you would teach. Let me introduce you to some of the people who work for my foundation. Let me prove to you that this offer is real and that I'm serious about it. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes. The possibility of studying music full-time, of developing her talent with the best teachers in the world, was overwhelming. 6 months later, Elena stood in the main auditorium at Berklee College of Music in Boston. She was wearing a cap and gown, waiting to walk across the stage to receive her certificate for completing the summer preparatory program. In just a few weeks, she would start her first full semester as a degree student. Elena looked out into the audience and saw Miguel sitting in the 3rd row. He was wearing a new suit that David had helped him pick out, and he was grinning with pride. Next to Miguel sat David, who had become much more than just Elena's benefactor over the past 6 months. The preparatory program had been David's idea. Instead of throwing Elena directly into the intense full-time program at Berkeley, he had arranged for her to spend the summer taking classes to prepare for the academic and musical challenges ahead. Elena had studied music theory, piano technique, composition, and music history with some of the best teachers in the country. But the summer had been about much more than just Elena's education. It had been a time of growth and discovery for both Elena and David, and a time of new opportunities for Miguel. Elena remembered the day in January when David had first shown her the community center where she would be teaching. The building was beautiful and modern, with several music rooms equipped with excellent pianos. The program served children from low-income families, providing free music lessons and instruments. This is where you'll work with the kids, David had said, showing Elena a bright room with 6 upright pianos. We have about 40 children in the program, ages 6 to 16. Elena had been nervous about teaching, but David had assured her that her passion for music and her understanding of the children's backgrounds would make her a natural teacher. These kids are just like you were, David had said. They love music, but they don't have the resources to pursue it properly. You can be the person for them that you wished you had when you were their age. Elena's first day of teaching had been scary but wonderful. She worked with 12 students, helping them learn basic piano skills and music theory. Some of the children were beginners, while others had been playing for a year or two. Elena quickly discovered that she loved teaching. She enjoyed seeing the children's faces light up when they successfully played a difficult passage or understood a new musical concept. She especially loved working with the children who reminded her of herself, talented but discouraged by their family's financial limitations. One of Elena's students was a 10-year-old girl named Sophia who had exceptional natural ability, but was convinced that music was only for rich people. Elena spent extra time with Sophia, encouraging her and showing her that music belonged to everyone, regardless of their background. My teacher Elena came from a poor family just like mine, Sophia had told her mother after a few weeks of lessons. But she plays piano like an angel, and now she goes to the best music school in the country. Elena's work at the community center had given her a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just learning music for herself anymore. She was preparing to help other young musicians achieve their dreams. Meanwhile, Elena's partnership with David had developed into a deep friendship and musical collaboration. They met twice a week to practice together, working on piano duets and discussing musical ideas. David had been true to his word about getting serious about music again. He practiced several hours every day and had even started taking lessons with one of Elena's professors at Berkeley. His playing had improved dramatically over the 6 months, and Elena could see that music had brought joy and meaning back into his life. "Elena," David had said one day while they were working on a challenging Bach piece for 4 hands, "I want you to know that these music sessions are the happiest part of my week." Elena had felt the same way. Playing music with David was different from playing alone or even teaching children. David challenged her musically and intellectually, pushing her to think more deeply about interpretation and expression. They had also performed together several times. David had arranged for them to give concerts at the community center and at other charity events. These performances had been wonderful experiences for Elena, giving her confidence in front of audiences and helping her develop stage presence. But the biggest surprise of the 6 months had been how David had embraced his role in Elena's and Miguel's lives. He hadn't just provided financial support, he had become like an older brother, or mentor to both of them. David had helped Miguel apply to a prestigious private high school in Boston that specialized in science and engineering. Miguel's grades and test scores had earned him a full scholarship, and he was thrilled to be starting at his new school in September. "Elena," Miguel had said when he found out about the scholarship, "I can't believe how much our lives have changed. A year ago I was worried about whether we could afford my school supplies. Now I'm going to one of the best high schools in the country." Elena had felt the same amazement about her own transformation. A year ago she had been cleaning offices and waiting tables, dreaming about music school but convinced it would never happen. Now she was a student at Berkeley, working as a music teacher, and preparing for a career as a professional musician. The changes hadn't all been easy. Elena had felt guilty about leaving her jobs, especially disappointing Mr. Garcia at Sonny's Cafe. But Mr. Garcia had been nothing but supportive. "Elena," he had said on her last day of work, "you were always meant for something bigger than waiting tables. I'm proud of you for taking this opportunity." Mr. Garcia had also insisted that Elena keep his wife's pearl earrings. "She would have wanted you to have them," he had said. "Wear them when you perform. And remember that some of us believed in you from the beginning." Elena still wore the pearl earrings whenever she performed, thinking of Mr. Garcia and his wife as good luck charms that connected her to people who had supported her dreams. The hardest part of the transition had been learning to accept help without feeling guilty. Elena had grown up believing that she had to solve all her problems by herself. Learning to let David and others support her had required a change in mindset. David had been patient with Elena's struggles around accepting help. "Elena," he had said during one of their conversations, "you've been taking care of other people your whole life. Let someone take care of you for a while." Elena had gradually learned to see David's support not as charity, but as friendship and partnership. She contributed just as much to their relationship as he did, just in different ways. Her musical knowledge and teaching ability helped David grow as a musician, while her perspective on life helped him stay connected to what really mattered. Now, as Elena prepared to walk across the stage to receive her certificate, she reflected on how much had changed since that night at the charity party. She had asked David to play piano on a whim, thinking only about giving him a few minutes of joy. She had never imagined that simple gesture would lead to such a dramatic transformation of both their lives. Elena's name was called, and she walked across the stage to receive her certificate. The audience applauded, but Elena could hear Miguel and David cheering louder than everyone else. She smiled and waved to them, feeling grateful for their support and excited about the future. After the ceremony, Elena met Miguel and David outside the auditorium. Miguel hugged her tightly. "Elena, I'm so proud of you," Miguel said. "Mom and Dad would be amazed to see what you've accomplished." Elena felt tears in her eyes. Miguel was right. Their parents would have been amazed and proud. But Elena also knew that her parents would have been most proud of how she had taken care of Miguel and stayed true to her values throughout all the changes. David shook Elena's hand and then surprised her with a hug. "Congratulations, Elena. This is just the beginning. Thank you, David, for everything. I know I say it all the time, but I can't express how grateful I am." "You don't need to thank me anymore," David said with a smile. "You've given me just as much as I've given you. Maybe more." Elena knew David was right. Their partnership had benefited both of them in ways that couldn't be measured in money or opportunities. That evening, Elena, Miguel, and David went to dinner at a nice restaurant to celebrate. As they ate, they talked about their plans for the fall. Elena would start her full course load at Berkeley. Miguel would begin at his new high school. David would continue his music studies and expand the scholarship program to help more young musicians. "Elena," David said as they were finishing dessert, "I have something to tell you." Elena looked at David curiously. "What is it?" "I've decided to establish a formal scholarship foundation. It will be called the Elena Martinez Music Foundation, and it will help talented young musicians from low-income families attend music school." Elena stared at David in shock. "You want to name it after me? You're the inspiration for the whole program. Your story shows what's possible when talented people get the opportunities they deserve." Elena felt overwhelmed by the honor of having a foundation named after her, but she also felt the weight of responsibility that came with it. "David, if you're going to name the foundation after me, I want to be actively involved in running it. I want to help choose the scholarship recipients and mentor them through their studies." "I was hoping you'd say that," David said. "This should be our foundation, not just mine."